BuzzEdit version 2 allows you to open background graphic images into your workspace. This may be accomplished by selecting the shortcut key at the upper left corner here, or by going to the File menu and selecting Open Background Graphic Image. A dialog box opens which displays the previous images that you have used as background graphics here in the pull-down menu. The selection of any of these previous images also pulls up the previous settings for placement and size of the graphic. To open a new graphic, click on the ellipses, which opens an open dialog box, and to view pictures instead of file names, select the View menu and choose Thumbnails. This will display your graphic images as small pictures so that you may scroll down and select the one you'd like to use. When you click OK, the graphic by default is opened to fit the hoop. You may choose to type in a new width and height, and if you choose the lock aspect ratio, when you click the Apply button, it will measure the graphic so that it fits into your space evenly. By clicking the center button, this will center your graphic in the center of the hoop, and by clicking OK, you may now use it as a template for digitizing or creating an iron-on transfer. In this example, we're going to digitize this clock. So the first thing I'm going to do is zoom in, and I'm going to create the first semicircle, which is the outer wooden part of the clock. I select my Draw Ellipse tool and create my ellipse by click holding and dragging my mouse button in my workspace. This creates an ellipse and opens the dialog box. I may choose a new color for my outline by clicking on the color bar and selecting black for my outline. The zigzag width is fine of 1 millimeter, and I now need to change the color of the fill to be a sienna or dark brown color. To change the direction of the stitches, I simply click on the Draw Direction button, which closes the dialog box and allows me to click, hold, and drag a line designating the direction of my stitches. When I release my mouse button, my stitches are applied. I can choose a new pattern from the Pattern pull-down menu, and also change the stitch length or the stitch density. By clicking OK, the dialog box is closed, and I can now proceed. I'm going to click the Edit Object tool, which allows me to manipulate the outer boundaries of the object to fit more closely to the graphic. I simply drag them to fit and click the Enter key on my keyboard to apply the stitches. Now I need to draw the inside circle of the clock. So I'm going to choose the Draw Ellipse tool, click, hold, and drag, and when I release my mouse button, a hole is drawn inside of the circle, and I need to apply my outline. So I'm going to click on the outline, and it has remembered that it was black and 1 millimeter from the previous setting. I will select the fill, and I can change the color of the fill by selecting this color box, which opens up the color palette where I can select the color I'd like. The other options in the sewing properties are the density and stitch length, which I can change, or the stitch direction, and I can change this by either typing in a number or clicking on the Draw Direction button, click holding, and dragging to designate my direction of my stitches. I can change my pattern, and I want to make sure that I have chosen to delete the stitches underneath the last object. Click OK. And again, I need to fit it closer to the graphic, so I'm going to select my Edit Object, which opens up my wireframe editing and allows me to reshape my inside circle, and click the Enter key to reapply my stitches. Now I need to remove this bottom half of the circle. To do this, I'm going to simply chop it off by selecting the Draw Rectangle tool, click holding and dragging to draw a rectangle, making sure that all the stitches are underneath it, releasing my mouse button, and turning off my outline and off my fill, and selecting here to delete all stitches under the object. This actually, instead of digitizing, I'm removing stitches. When I click OK, all the stitches have been removed. I can turn off my background graphic to get a better image idea of what my graphic looks like or my stitches look like by selecting the button here in the menu. This turns off the graphic, and to turn it back on I simply click the button and click OK to select this graphic that I want to view. Now I need to put in the bottom of the clock. So again, I'm going to choose my Draw Rectangle, click, hold, and drag to draw my rectangular shape, select to have an outline and a fill. It has remembered the brown from before. I'm going to change the direction by drawing my angle, making sure that my fill pattern is the one that I had used before, and click OK to save my changes. Now I'm going to choose to edit my object so that it fits, and besides just being able to drag in the corners, there is a node here in the upper left corner which allows me to change the angle or the curvature of the angles of all four corners. When I hit the Enter key on my keyboard, the changes have been retained and the stitches are reapplied. Now I need to make sure that my colors and sort them so that they stitch out in a proper order. I would like for my browns to stitch first, and then the beige, and then the black. So I'm going to click on if I run the Sew Simulator, I can see how the design actually is going to stitch out. It stitches out the first semicircle, and then the first black outline, etc. I'm going to choose my Sort Colors button. This sorts the colors, however, it has put the black in the middle, and I'd like that to be at the end. So I'm going to simply double click on the beige, click, hold, drag, and drop it before the black. Now my colors are in the right order, and I can begin working on the rest of the clock. Let's zoom in on the center section, and the first thing I'm going to work on are these small squares. So to recreate these squares, I'm going to again select my rectangular tool, and I'm going to click, hold, and drag to create my little rectangle. I'm going to take off my outline stitch because I don't need an outline around this. It's just going to be a small satin stitch square. And I'm going to change my fill color to black, and I'm going to change the fill to a satin stitch. I can change the direction if I'd like by just simply dragging my arrow, my line, and click OK to save my changes. I can do this for all four of these, or I can simply select this one square, copy and paste it and move it. So I select copy, I click paste, and it pastes it right on top of the original. So now I can drag and drop it on top of the new sections. Paste another one and drag and drop it on top. Now doing this, I do not have to recreate and reset each one of these squares. I simply click, hold, drag, and drop. Turn off my background graphic image to get a preview of what I have done so far. Now I need to do this, I need to select the column tool. So first I'm going to zoom in, select the column tool, and the first click of my mouse anchors my column, and the second click draws the direction of the bottom stitches. The third click, when I move up my mouse, shows the direction in which the stitches are going, and the second click shows the angle of these stitches. And I click to create my arrow point, double click to exit or hit the Enter key. This opens up the dialog box where I can choose to have an outline of a running stitch, make sure it runs around 2 times, and change my fill stitch and click OK. Now to create the second hand on my clock, again I have the column tool selected. Click to anchor, second click, show direction, click under the arrowhead, make it wider to create the bottom of the arrow, hit the Enter key after I click at the top. My settings are saved, and my 2 hands have now been created. So now those will stitch first according to my stitches in time graph. So I need to click, hold, and drag and drop them in time to the very end of my stitches so that they stitch at the very end of my design and my layering is intact. Now I need to put in the blue blob or the background behind the clock. So I'm going to first look at my actual size pop-up to see what my design looks like. I'm going to hit the minus key, zoom out so that I can get a better idea, and this time I will choose the complex shape tool. This tool allows me to draw a random shape around the background image. So I'm going to select it, and by right-clicking you create curved nodes, and by left-clicking you create straight nodes. So I will right-click around this blob. When I get to the top, I can hit the double-click or hit the Enter key on my keyboard. This will open up the Stitches dialog box where I can choose my outline color, and I need that to be a dark blue if I'm going to copy my graphic. I want it to be a zigzag stitch, and I'd probably like this to be a little wider than what we were using on the clock. So I'm going to choose 2.5 millimeters and change my fill to a lighter color, and I can change my density and stitch length to be more accurate as to the effect that I am looking for. So I'm changing it to be a 1.6 density and a 2 millimeter stitch length. Now I'd like to cut out the stitches underneath the clock. Again, I choose the custom shape, right-click to make curves, left-click to create points, and I will simply draw around the inside of my clock area here to cut out the blue stitches. When I get to the top, I click on the Enter key or double-click. This brings up the dialog box where I can turn off my outline and my fill if I wish, and this will cut a hole in the center of this design. It just takes out the last stitches from the previous object that I just created. If I choose all the stitches, it would delete the clock as well. So I want to just have the last object, click OK to set my changes, and this will create a nice hole inside my object. So that now I can choose my Edit Object property, drag the nodes so that they fall within the boundary of the clock stitches, because I do not want a gap between the background and the clock. I don't want any of the fabric showing through. Once I have manipulated the stitches so that they are perfect, I can hit the Enter key to create the stitches, and if I select the stitches and move them out of the way, I can see that my hole has been created, and I can now save my design as it is ready to be stitched.